You are about to understand why the vast majority of guitarists who have accumulated dozens of classic licks from Charlie Parker, Grant Green, Michael Brecker, Mike Stern, you name it, you guys out there accumulating licks still sound amateur, while top 1% guitarists sound like absolute wizards with hardly any licks at all. You're about to discover the brutal truth in lick accumulation and why licks that sound great coming from Charlie Parker sound weak and nerdy coming from you. I'll show you exactly what top 1% guitarists do differently with classic licks, and I'll give you the exact framework that has helped hundreds of my students achieve the level of musical sophistication that you are trying to achieve through lick accumulation. So first, let's understand the lick accumulation trap. Here's what no one's telling you. Collecting licks is actually sabotaging your playing. And if you keep collecting licks, you're gonna spend years sounding weak and nerdy, always wondering what is the secret sauce that great players have that you don't have. Now here's the brutal truth. Sophisticated players sound sophisticated because they don't play licks. Instead, they play the very thing that supports the music in the moment. Starting to become clear why licks are a huge problem, right? Your licks aren't informed by the musical moment. So that's why when you play them, it's like you're forcing a square peg in a round hole. And that forcing of licks where they don't belong is the very thing that pulls you out of the flow and then makes you sound weak and shy in the moment of performance, right? So here's how we're gonna break free of the lick accumulation trap. We're gonna look at a classic Charlie Parker lick, and we're gonna understand exactly why he played each note that he played. We're gonna get inside his mind and see the lick from his perspective to realize it's not a lick at all. It's actual improvisation. So here's the lick, a 3, 4, 1. So let's try to understand what Charlie Parker's thinking here, right? Well, he's thinking of playing chord tones, right? So look, every note that he's playing here, it's a chord tone. Classic major 7 arpeggio, but what about this part? It's chromatic approach to land on a strong chord tone on a strong beat. This is voice leading, okay? This is modern voice leading. When we talk about chromatic approach, the kind of chromatic approach that Charlie Parker does, we can understand this as voice leading. He is making a smooth connection from one chord to the next. When he lands on this C, that's the minor third of A minor 7 flat 5, right? So he's chromatically approaching a chord tone, a very important chord tone, in the next chord in the sequence. The chromatic approach is what allows the smooth connection from one chord to the next. This is actually the genius of Charlie Parker. I mean, the idea of chromatic approach is very innovative because it's rooted in that first principle, rule number 1 of voice leading, but it's taking a more subversive approach and playing a bunch of notes that are not really related to the chord tone. All these chromatic notes, right? Flat 7, 6, flat 6, right? Those are not in the chord of F major 7, but it's an approach to a very important note in the next chord of the sequence. You see, this is how he's thinking. And now let's look at this A minor 7 flat 5. What's going on here? He's trying to set up that F sharp that clearly marks the transition from A minor 7 flat 5 to D7, right? So it's just a rhythmic thing, right? He's playing F sharp on beat 3, right? That's not an accident, that's very deliberate. But look at all the notes surrounding it. So to understand how we got to that F sharp, it really is just a matter of voice leading, right? It's kind of this descending idea, right? That trill from A to B flat, that B flat, it's a passing tone that aligns to Charlie Parker's rhythmic intention. And we're gonna see some more of that at the end of the lick as well. Because once we land on that F sharp, via perfect voice leading, right? The minor seventh of A minor 7 flat 5 going to the major third of that D7, transitioning from one chord to the next by a small interval, by a half step, right? The last note of A minor 7 flat 5 is a half step above the first note of a D7. That's what makes the strong connection, right? Mentality stuff. Now look what happens. Once we're inside the D7, look what happens. Bigger intervals. He opens it up to bigger intervals, right? Look. Look, those are bigger intervals, right? Down a minor third, down another minor third. But then look, chromatic approach to set up that perfect voice leading. Hear the strength of that, right? Look at this in context. Right? Approaching an important note in the G minor 7 via chromatic approach. You see, the chromatic approach is the modern subversion of voice leading. It's following all the rules of voice leading by using notes purely rhythmically, right? In order to set up strong chord tones on strong beats. This is the mentality of Charlie Parker. That's the lesson of this lick here. And implicit in this lick is voice leading. You understand? It's just a voice leading concept, right? He's just voice leading from F major 7 to A minor 7 flat 5 via 3 chromatic approach tones. Those 3 chromatic approach tones create a smooth transition from F major 7 to A minor 7 flat 5. And notice those chromatic approach tones are only happening on weak parts of the measure, right? E flat happening on the and of 3, D flat happening on the and of 4, and then slamming the downbeat of A minor 7 flat 5 with the minor third of that A minor 7 flat 5 chord. Lots of power in doing this and understanding this. But now, let me make this huge point here. When I play this lick, I'll be honest, I think it sounds pretty lame. I can't sound even a fraction as ballsy as Charlie Parker does when I play it. I literally just sound like a nerd. And here's the thing. That's what's happening to you. Is you're thinking, okay, I'm wielding the power of Charlie Parker. Not exactly, because you're forcing a lick where Charlie Parker was actually improvising. Two very, very different things. So what you want to do here is you want to start to understand the mentality of Charlie Parker so that you have that, and that's what you're wielding when you're improvising. And so what do we identify? We've identified voice leading subversion through chromatic approach. Genius dynamite stuff here. But the mistake that 99% of guitarists are making is they're thinking they just need to force that lick in the moment of improvisation. That's what they're thinking they need to do with this. They're not realizing, no, this is a mentality shift. You're seeing inside Charlie Parker's mind by looking at the notes that he played against the chord change. And as a result of doing this, you're seeing those high leverage focus points that facilitate masterful improvisation. And so what is that primary rule number 1 high leverage point of masterful improvisation? It's voice leading. Voice leading, more specifically, connecting from one chord to the next by half step. So now what we're gonna do is practice moving from one chord to the next by half step. And to do that, I'm gonna show you the practice system that I've been showing my students for years, which allows them to understand the mentality of a player who is improvising a lick. Okay, here's how we're gonna do this practice, right? So we see this Charlie Parker lick is contained within this 4-bar chord progression, right? So let's just get that in our ear, Now, our lick only covers us for the first 2 measures, so we have all that space in the second 2 measures. This is the classic practice framework, right? We're leaving ourselves space to improvise in response to the Charlie Parker lick, right? So it's gonna look something like this. I'll play this and then I'm going to unpack it for you, right? So, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, let's talk about this, right? I was literally just thinking about the exact same things that Charlie Parker was thinking about, but because I'm not Charlie Parker, I came to my own conclusions, right? But what was I doing? I was playing strong chord tones on strong beats, and I was chromatically approaching into them. Exactly what Charlie Parker was doing. Do I sound like Charlie Parker? No. I just sound like someone who understands voice leading and how that relates to chromatic approach, which are primary skill sets of masterful improvisation. Now, to dive a little bit deeper here, okay? This is where we start to actually integrate the Charlie Parker lick into our own vocabulary, right? Because every time I'm playing this lick, I just feel like a fraud, basically, like I'm a copycat or something like that. Like, why would a grown man such as myself want to copy the licks of another grown man who actually was probably a lot younger than me when he played this? You know what I'm saying? So what I want to do is I just want to integrate this into a way that feels authentic to me, right? So how does this begin? Well, take the F major 7 arpeggio, for example. Maybe instead of voice leading chromatically like this, I can just go from the major 7th of F major to the flat 5 of A minor 7 flat 5. That's going to be perfect. That's going to give me the sound of that transition from F major to A minor 7 flat 5. Something like this. Check this out, right? I have to use more space, but it's going to be awesome, right? I'm learning the lessons of Charlie Parker, but I'm adapting them to my own musical instincts, which are different than his, right? So, 3, 4. Right? Notice the voice leading, right? I'm doing all the same voice leading and I'm playing strong chord tones on strong beats like this. And 3 and 4 and 1. I'm enclosing the root of G minor with a note that's a whole step above it and a note that's a half step below it. And then just for the sake of rhythm, dropping down to that common tone between D7 and G minor 7, the D itself. That's a perfect resolution. And then I'm leaving space at that point. And I'm filling that space with chords. Because I'm a guitarist, right? It's another big thing, right? If you definitely want to think about what is your instrument capable of doing that the person that you're transcribing from is not capable of doing, that's a really easy way to apply the lessons learned from studying these solos. So now that I've kind of adopted that lick, what I might do is I might just play a 4-bar loop, right? And I'm going to come back to the same motif at the top of the 4-bar loop every time, right? I'm always going to play 1. That's going to be my jumping off point, right? That's kind of the part that I'll keep from Charlie Parker. And maybe I'll make a few adjustments to that, but I'll keep the same rhythm, right? This is a good focus practice. It's that idea of developing call and response, right? I have the same call with some subtle variations every time, but then that's going to open up to all these different responses, right? So here's where the systematic practice comes in. Here's how you're going to really master this simple little progression here of 4 bars. 3, 4. Okay, good. That was a good example to stop because I gotten a little over my head. My chromatic approach kind of got me off those strong beats. What did I do? I just rolled with it and I actually doubled up on one of the notes. That's what got me to realign back to a strong beat, right? That's real improvisation. Notice this. It's like I made a mistake, but I was prepared to make a mistake. And so it didn't throw me off and I knew how to fix it. I just needed to add one more subdivision, right? This is the power of getting inside the head of great improvisers, right? Learn something that they played, understand it with respect to the chord changes, and then simply just try to apply the same voice leading principles as a response to the lick that you learned, and then also, of course, do variations on the lick itself, right? This is how you develop a high level of sophistication very, very quickly as a guitarist. The trap that I see a lot of people in when they come and start working with me is that it doesn't occur to them to adjust the licks that they're transcribing to fit their own unique musical voice, which is kind of connected to your technique, right? Like this lick, for example, 1. I just can't play that comfortably. Like that chromatic approach it's just not something that fits under my fingers very well. But in comparison, 3, 4. That's more like my style, right? Less notes, more rhythm, same voice leading principle that provides the sound of F major to A minor 7 flat 5 just as powerfully as Charlie Parker's movement does, but it's a little bit more adapted to my technique. And by the same logic, check out this other lick. That's a really slick trick right there, right? Very guitaristic. I can play all these 2-note per strings on triplets, right? And because it's guitar, it's easy for me to go from F to E flat there. But because all those notes are happening relatively quickly, the point of the voice leading still comes across, right? You're still getting the sound of that F major to A minor 7 flat 5, although I'm kind of now subverting Charlie Parker's whole intention here, which is a beautiful thing. It's like if Charlie Parker was being subversive, then I should probably maybe consider some subversion opportunities as well. And it's a mentality thing, right? That's a mentality thing. So the power of this approach to practice is that you're getting inside the minds of your favorite players. And that's not what happens if you just transcribe. That's not enough. You need to understand why they're playing the notes that they're playing. And ideally, you can come up with a formula that's going to give you the answer every time you ask the question, what would so-and-so do, right? With Charlie Parker, it's like, what would Charlie Parker do? He would play strong chord tones on strong beats, and he would chromatically approach them. That's it. And now you start to understand sophisticated playing has nothing to do with the licks that you're playing, because the fact that you're thinking about a lick in the first place is the reason why you don't sound sophisticated, right? Charlie Parker didn't think about licks. Joe Henderson didn't think about licks. Michael Brecker didn't think about licks. They're thinking about supporting the music in the moment, and they have their own formulas, right? Michael Brecker has a formula. Charlie Parker has a formula. So a really, really great approach to your musical development is trying to understand those formulas that the great players have and then apply those formulas to your solos through chord changes. I know I gave a small example here, but if you want to go deeper, I'm going to recommend you start with my Intro to Fretboard Mastery. That's a free course, okay? That's going to get you crystal clear on the foundation of playing chord changes so that you understand chord changes before you start to look at Charlie Parker lick or a Michael Brecker lick, right? It's important to understand how chord changes work. Understand that also important rule number 1 of voice leading. That needs to be the guiding principle. And then once you understand voice leading, then you look at other people's licks and you're like,
Oh, look how they're voice leading. That's a slick way to voice lead.
that right there, that's the formula for mastery right there. It's understanding what rule number 1 is, which is voice leading, and then simply seeing the mentality of voice leading by looking at other players doing that. But don't just copy what they're doing. Instead, integrate what they're doing by adapting it to what feels most natural to you. It's a really simple thing. Everyone's trying to force the technique. Just embrace what's natural in your technique, right? Adapt licks so they fit your technique and boom, instantly they're your own. It's a really simple idea, but the implications are staggering. And this is just the tip of the iceberg to what I've shown you today. There's an entire comprehensive systematic framework for understanding this stuff. And you can get started understanding that systematic framework with my Intro to Fretboard Mastery course. First link in the description. So if this video made sense to you, I definitely recommend grabbing that. Also, you're gonna wanna subscribe because I'm gonna keep dropping bombs. And so if you're watching those videos and doing Intro to Fretboard Mastery, well, guess what? That's a recipe for mastery. I'll see you next time.